listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me, as always, Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Been a busy week, but doing well.
Yeah, it's starting to get into the real muck and grind of the season. A bunch of games this week. We got a bunch more coming up this upcoming week.
One more, and then we all get a well-deserved break.
That is true. Yes. And before we get into that, we will talk about the All-Star game a little bit, I guess. But yeah, before we get into that, follow us on the social media, hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. We really appreciate you checking us out everywhere. Okay. At YWT podcast, Kevin's at Kevin_Durso. Okay. Diving right into it. The Flyers had a little bit of an up and down week. Started the week on Monday in St. Louis. It was a great game that I was actually fortunate enough to attend. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then another win on Wednesday night, and then Thursday night. And
believe me, I appreciated those. No, but I appreciated those 2 days off in between. Believe me,
that's fair. And man, what a game Thursday night. We'll definitely be talking about that one. And then we had a little weekend not a home and home, but a little back-to-back at home against the Colorado Avalanche and the Ottawa Senators, and the Flyers fell short in both games. But yeah, I guess you want to start at the top here in St. Louis?
Sure, because you can speak to this one more than I can because you were there. Normally, I'm the one who's there. So
yeah. So
I do want to get a feel for how the vibe was like, because you're going and you weren't alone among Flyers fans. They definitely showed a few on the broadcast.
There was a lot.
Was it okay? And I know things are not exactly peachy in St. Louis right now. I get it. Like, they fired Berube halfway through the year. It's not exactly, playoff run material right now. So
no, but it was definitely
so. If that means you're ripe for opposing fans to come in, you know what I mean.
Well, so it was still a heavy Blues crowd. Don't get me wrong. Like this wasn't a Rangers take over the Wells Fargo Center. Like this wasn't a situation like that. But the Flyers fans that were there were in great spirits, obviously, as most of us are, just given the fact that the team is far out shooting expectations here.
Well, because we had also, to go from the last episode to the start of this one, we did the whole scheduled loss in Winnipeg thing all week long, and then came on. It was like, oh yeah, by the way, nope, they won.
By the way, they won that game.
So you're already coming in riding a high of sorts because they just won the first 2 games of a road trip that you would have thought they would split.
Sure.
So now they're going in to face a beatable opponent in St. Louis, going for a sweep of a road trip. And it's essentially their last road trip like this, where they cross over time zones and they really have to play for any significant length of time. This is really fun, by the way, because I know like the Sunday night record thing, since obviously the Flyers had an Sunday afternoon game, so we had to go with the night thing. So there's on the fly editing happening to some of the banners you'll see later.
Okay.
But in a positive way, by the way.
Right.
If I don't know if you can see what I just edited. One of these had a temporary thing. So
that is true. Yes.
We'll get to it, but there's a result that's coming in that's helpful.
Yeah, well, we may touch on some breaking scores throughout the league, obviously. If you're
there's one. Well, we're not going to get far enough into the other game that's going to matter to that. But this one does solidify something we were going to talk about. But
anyway, back in St. Louis,
that was a really interesting game because St. Louis played them tough. They were the better team for a majority of the game, but it's 2-2 early third period. I don't know how you were feeling sitting there watching it. I know that I'm sitting there going, just kind of looking at the situation, going, first of all, it was almost tied at the end of the second. It looked like it was going to be honest. They finally gave up a power play goal.
Yes.
And they scored with under 10 seconds left. And you're like,
Flyers answer right back.
Well, and that was deserved. They really deserved to lead that game through 2. And then you gave it back what was it, 2 minutes, 3 minutes into the third period. So it was tied again. And now you got to grind it out against this team in the same way you kind of did with Winnipeg.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the energy in the building amongst the Blues fans was a nervous energy for a large portion of the game. Like it certainly felt in the building like the Flyers were controlling the pace. Like generally speaking, there's flows to the gameplay and stuff, but
no, they really did though.
Generally speaking, they were kind of hemming the Blues in their own zone, and the fans were restless, and it was not. So when the Flyers scored, when Scott Lawton finally breaks through early in the second, it felt it felt justified. And
Sure.
then the fact that they kind of cranked it up for most of the period after that really, it took a lot of the life out of the building. It fired right back up as soon as they score. Of course.
I mean, they had more shots in the second period than St. Louis did for the whole game at that point.
Right.
I mean, they outshot St. Louis 20-9 in the second period. St. Louis had 18 shots after the first two periods.
Right.
You deserve to be leading that game after two periods, and you were 7 seconds away from not.
Right. And I think it really sucked the energy out of the crowd because they had just gotten up. You get the power play, you get the quick goal right away on it felt like a bit of a questionable penalty in the building, but I assume they showed a replay on television that it was just super clear.
I wish I could remember exactly which penalty it was within the game.
It was Garnet Hathaway something, and I can't remember, but
he didn't like it. I remember he didn't like it.
I don't remember the incident, but regardless,
you know, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was still justified. Like it was I wasn't sitting. Yeah, I wasn't sitting here looking at it going, it's not.
Okay.
It just he felt like it was.
He didn't like
because I think I know which one this. I might know.
It was the high sticking on Kapanen.
Yeah, I know that. Now I'm crossing games, so I'm not even going to try to do this.
That's fine. Regardless,
I'm coming off of a week with 3 home games and 4 games in general, so like
fair enough.
You know.
But in the building though, even though you've been getting outplayed the whole game, you're getting a power play. You score on it right away. The building is immediately right back up to a 10.
Sure.
Because at this point it's a tie game, you know, what we think is heading towards the end of the second period. And then the goal with 6.8 seconds or 7 seconds, whatever it ended up being, Ryan.
It was under 6. Right. It was under 7. So it was 6 point something or other. It counts.
I think it was 6.8. I was really disappointed it wasn't 6.9, but that's okay. But either way, that really takes the pin. It puts the pin in the balloon, and
because it's the type of goal you just gave up. You know, the late power play goal could have the same effect on you, and the Flyers have been sometimes, you know, in years past have been that team that gives up that goal, that one that puts them behind now, and you're going to have to find a way to rally back from something that you don't feel like you deserve to rally back from. And it's the sky is falling, nothing's going the right way kind of thing. And instead they deliver it to St. Louis instead. And by the way, it's not, you know, obviously as we get further along and we go to the third period of this game, it's not going to be the most skilled goal of the game that we're going to discuss, but Ryan Poehling with the hand-eye there, to bat one out of midair and score there. Like,
that was pretty.
That looks like that almost looks like it should be kind of a nothing play, and you turn it into something because he picks up on the fact that he can bat the puck out of midair, you know, like, and I love the fact that up until this point, because it was one of my complaints in previous weeks anyway, somebody other than Konechny, Farabee kind of like needs to start scoring goals, and you get Lawton and Poehling. That's like, if that didn't tell you right away what kind of game this was and how you needed it to come from the depths, then, you know, nothing would. So good for, you know, good on, you know, that grouping of players, that bottom 6 group right now that needed to find a way to come through before eventually, as we'll get to, somebody in the top 6 was able to come through in a very big way.
But then, so the energy kind of gets sucked out of the building right at the end of the second period, and
they got it right back 118 into the third, though, right?
That's what I was gonna say. Brandon Saad puts it in, and
weird goal, by the way, because there was a loose stick on the ice, and I think Hart, this was Erison in goal. I'm sorry.
Maybe not in the top 5 for weirdest goals of the week, but a weird goal for sure.
Who was in goal for this game? It was Carter Hart. It was Carter Hart. I was right the first time. I'm sorry. It was, again, goalie changes, and we're going to get into that later too.
Yeah, we will.
No, so Carter Hart kind of picked up the stick there a little bit, and then there was a little bit of a screen too. So it kind of looked like a broken play, but
it's an unfortunate
circumstance. And this is it for a big chunk of the third period. I mean, the next goal that we will speak of is it nearly, you know, is with 5:33 to go in regulation.
And for a lot of that period, it was kind of watching a tennis game. You know, you're kind of watching them
very much so.
Get the red line and clear. Get the red line and clear. Get the red line, and both teams were doing it.
Well, I say remember that part where St. Louis only had 18 shots through the first 2 periods total. Yeah. They had 12 in the third period and actually outshot the Flyers 12-9. So.
Sure.
You know, that they brought it in the third period as the home team, as kind of the, you know,
the team that was getting outplayed for a large portion.
But let's not forget the Flyers had played a back-to-back earlier in the
fairly
weekend.
recently.
It was still technically the weekend because it was a long weekend.
It was your third game in 4 nights. Your
but it was
fourth
still a
game
3
in
and
6
4
nights. Like it's the Flyers have
So
played a lot of
you know,
hockey.
well, and so you're pushing 33 shots through 2 periods. You've got a 2-1 lead to show for it. So goaltending's been really good on the opposite side, obviously, at that point. So that, and you're trying to find somebody needed to make a play is the point. And sure enough,
boy did he. Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I know we're about 10 minutes into this show here.
Yes.
I think this is the star of the show.
Oh, it definitely is going to be, because so much of the whole week surrounds this one player.
So if you don't know who I'm talking about, then you haven't been watching, and you haven't been on social media all week. You haven't watched a single Flyers game all week. You haven't. Owen Tippett is the star of the week.
Yes.
And it starts with, as you so eloquently put it in the group chat, putting Justin Falk's jock in the upper deck. And
I had to ask. So,
and absolutely dangling through Justin Falk, who is a relatively good defenseman.
Sure.
I mean, I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to what he's done recently. He's careers kind of go to die in St. Louis at the moment, but
somewhat, I understand.
But either way, Justin Falk was a solid defenseman for a lot of years with Carolina Hurricanes, and Owen Tippett made him look like an absolute traffic cone.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. You're absolutely not wrong. Yeah, it's just a great play. I mean, and
it's just a player making an individual play.
It was an individual effort play, and sometimes that's what you need more than trying to find the perfect play elsewhere. Sometimes you just need to make a play. And you're looking at it there, and I mean, everything about it was gonna be like we said. He undresses Falk on the move, and then to stay on the backhand and elevate. I mean, we've seen his shot forehand. Like, he's showing. We're gonna get into later in the week too. He showed it that the backhand's got some zip too.
Right. And Hofer looked fantastic in that game.
Sure, and
so to beat him as clean as he did was
which was an interesting choice, by the way, too, because I'm sure a lot of people would have expected Binnington to go.
Yeah, I wish it was, man. I wanted to see his crazy ass. Come on.
Sure, I know what you mean.
He's one of those players, and there's not too many of them, but he's one of those players that you are on your toes anytime he's around, because his wires might cross and he might do something illegal in 28 states. Like,
I love how you put that. Yeah, I know. I love how you put that, though. That's really funny.
Obviously, you're watching Evgeny Malkin for other reasons too, but you watch his game for some of that. You watch the Matthew Tkachuk game for that. Like, some guys, man, the wires cross and they just go haywire, and Binnington has been known to be one of those guys.
Right. Absolutely. You're right. You're 1,000% right.
So for entertainment factor, money for ticket relevant, I would have liked to see Binnington. But that being said, Joel Hofer made 38 stops and looked phenomenal.
Sure, of course he did.
So,
and you got to give credit where it's due, right? Like, so the goalie was obviously really good. That's the whole reason St. Louis has a chance in that game. He's clearly the number one star for most of the day.
Oh, yeah.
And that's fine. That's all well and good. And
certainly wasn't Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, I hear you there. That was yeah.
He looked atrocious. It was great.
Sure. I mean,
I had my own Kevin Hayes ISO cam going all game.
I bet you did. It's funny. He ended up with a shot probably while it was still tied 2-2, I want to imagine. But he kind of was in a decent spot to get a rebound somewhere in that period. And I felt like it was the first time I saw him the whole game. I'm almost positive it was the first time I saw him the whole game.
He got the puck right below the face-off circle in like that patented Kevin Hayes spot, and I got nervous.
I mean, somewhere in there, he finished with 2 shots on goal, 1 block shot, and 1 hit. I mean,
could have fooled me.
Sure. I mean, like, if you want to talk about former Flyers that had a really decent game, Braden Shen was not bad. Obviously, had 2 assists in the game, so you got to give.
Shen looked great.
Braden Shen looked good. I mean,
I believe that was a milestone game for him too. They celebrated
900th.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say it was
900th game.
900. Okay.
Yes.
I knew they celebrated something. They showed a video package. They blah
Which,
blah
by the
blah.
way, this is one of the hilarious parts of
The
this. By the
fact
way,
that it tracks out against the Flyers.
no,
is
it has no, it had
hilarious.
nothing to do with that they were playing the
Okay.
Flyers. It's the part
Okay.
where somebody like I think I saw somewhere where they added up how he got to 900, and it's like, oh, by the way, like the number of games in LA was like 6 or something like that. And so it's like so it was all these games at the Flyers, something like 500 something games, and then he's played for St. Louis for long enough that it's like 400, you know, or close
oh,
to
he's
400.
been there a long time. He'll end up playing more games there for sure.
Oh, more games in yeah, of course he will
Yeah.
in St. Louis, absolutely.
He'll go down as a Blue more than likely, and like good for him.
Oh yeah. It's
he won a cup
him,
there. I mean,
well, exactly, and now he's a captain there. So what do you think's going to happen?
That's the end of that.
You know, that's the way it's going to go. Back to Owen Tippett because we like talking about, you know.
And good for Braden Shen, by the way. Like,
yes. Yeah. No.
I always liked what he gave to the organization.
I have nothing against. I have nothing against him either. So that was Owen Tippett's start of the week. Oh, by the way, to finish off the game, Joel Farabee scored an empty net or two to cap it off. So you weren't like drastically holding your breath through the last whatever amount of time.
It was nice to have a little clarity.
50 seconds. Yeah, there you go.
I was doing the happy dance while all the Blues fans left to beat traffic. By the way, we came out of the stadium and it was snowing sideways. It was great. I did not know it was going to snow.
Yeah, you got it first then.
I had about a 10-minute walk to the car in snow that I was not expecting. There was already 2 inches on the ground.
Oh,
and I'm talking in the street.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
fun travel then, right?
Oh, once we got out of the city, it wasn't too bad. It switched to rain about 30 miles north of the city, and it wasn't too bad.
Not bad. Okay,
but regardless,
well, then it got sent eastbound to
that storm system was nasty.
Well, Philly got a Tuesday system and then a Friday system, so in total, it was probably about anywhere between 6 and 8 inches total over the course of 2 different days. And
yeah, I heard y'all got hit.
Digging out of it was a whole hell of a lot of fun here. And specifically like the Tuesday part was what it was. Specifically the part where I covered a game on Thursday, dug out the house on, the driveway on Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday had 2 more games. Like awesome. The one day in between all those games, and I got to dig out the driveway.
You're feeling like a Bills fan, am I right?
A little bit.
So you're not getting $20 an hour in free food.
No, we're not getting feet of snow either, at least. Thank goodness. Knock on wood that there's not more of that. I do know that this week it's supposed to turn to rain like you're talking about, which I will gladly take at this point.
Okay, back to the Flyers here.
Let's get to that Thursday game, and I might as well honestly, if you want to start talking about like where it's gonna go or whatever, I'm just gonna start prepping because I'm gonna prepare to share a screen. Because I feel like we just need to put the thing in,
Absolutely.
I just need to put this one. I'm going to need to put this up on the screen.
So the Flyers finished taking care of business in St. Louis. A couple days off, nice, rest days. I believe John Tortorella said he gave them both days fully off. Is that correct?
And okay. I don't think that was the initial plan. I think the initial plan was Tuesday off, Wednesday practice, and then Thursday skate. And they just took the 2 days, and boy, did that work wonders because they came out flying.
Absolutely.
No pun intended.
Flying.
Yeah, no pun intended, but flying. Now, we're on Owen Tippett, and Owen Tippett's part of this story before we get to the clip that we're actually going to show. But let's start with all the other stuff that gets to this point first, because the game in and of itself, by the way, so they're out there flying effective immediately. And again, it's like the St. Louis game. Nothing to show for it in the first period until there's a minute left. Finally, you break through. What a nice pass by Morgan Frost. No looker over the middle. Here comes Sean Walker jumping up in the play.
What a freaking pass. And by the way, when you say when the Flyers control things in the first period, they outshoot the Dallas Stars 14-1 in the first frame.
I do want to make a point here that the one is I think might be a little fraudulent, because I think there I think there might have been a close one that they ended up not counting. That they outshot them plenty. I mean, I thought you
were going the other way. I thought you were saying it was a shutout.
No. It was just it was. Okay. There may have been 2 or 3, but they still would have outshot them 14-3 at most. Like
crazy.
And like, to be honest, you start to feel bad for Sam Ersson at that point for a second, because his previous home game was the Montreal game where he gave up 2 goals on 2 shots. You're like, what is it about first periods with Sam Ersson in that they don't give up any shots?
Right. I'm sorry the team is so dominant, Sam.
For real. So they get a goal out of all of those shots. They get a goal. They're on the board. It's 1-0. Sean Walker, by the way, hasn't scored in a little while either. So good to see him.
Yes.
You know, we will be talking about him a lot over the next several weeks because obviously that is a prime trade candidate, and that value is going to be high when you do things like that. You've got to acknowledge that,
which is not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing at all.
Putting the organization in a bad spot in a good way.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, well, we'll get, because we're going to get into that as we get to the rest of the games this weekend. So they get a 2-0 lead. That's Tippett's first of this game.
Nice little goal.
Nice little shot off the face off. It's literally a face off win. He steps into the circle. He lets it go. It's in the net. Nice. I mean, you blink, you miss it kind of thing. Like, that's the situation there. And then it goes again. Because, by the way, they sat on Dallas, by the way, was on one shot until they were killing a penalty when they got their next two shots.
There was a stat mentioned.
And they were killing a penalty with, there
was a stat mentioned on the broadcast that, again, maybe a little dubious with the shots that may or may not have counted later in the first. But at one point in time, the Dallas Stars went more than 60 minutes of real time without a shot on goal. And now that did include the intermission, and I'm talking about but still, Sam Ersson didn't see an official shot on goal in more than an hour.
So let me elaborate on why that is too. The only shot on goal of the first period for Dallas was 27 seconds into the period.
Right,
it was an immediate 2-on-1 save made. Ersson got the blocker on it, knocks it up into the safety netting. Good save. Honestly, test her early on because the first couple of shifts. If I told you watch the first two shifts of that game and that the Flyers are going to outshoot the Stars 14-1 in the first period, you would have laughed at me.
Right.
Like,
and then they did it.
It didn't look like that at all. So they dominate from there. And then here's kind of where it starts, because Tyler Seguin scores to make it 2-1. That was their fourth shot of the game.
Yep.
That's it. It's 12:42 into the second period. We are more than halfway through. Only 4 shots, but they're on the board, and it's a 2-1 game. And that's the score going to the third period. So you're sitting here going, just like with St. Louis, they're doing everything right.
Right.
Shots everything is going the way it should.
30-9 after the second period.
And yet you are one mistake away from from a tie game and a possible situation where you could lose this game if that's the way it continues to go.
On home ice.
And the Flyers had a situation there where they got a late power play in the second. They didn't score during the rest of the second, but they were going to have carryover time. And as such, it was like, this is a big opportunity. And they came out and they scored on it. And this has been nice to see, because we'll say this name again later on as the show progresses. Cam Atkinson picking back up where he left off in Winnipeg, gets a goal on the power play. That's great. That gives him some cushion. This is hysterical to me because, again, we've got the clip we're going to get to as the last goal of the game. It glosses over the fact that there was a penalty shot goal.
Yep. In
the middle of this third period. Scott Lawton, which, by the way, so I don't know if you realize this. I don't remember exactly where I saw this ultimately, but I think I hope I'm remembering everything correctly. Lawton's penalty shot goal, that's the third Flyers penalty shot goal this season. Okay. Because Couturier had one in the home opener against Vancouver. Konechny scored in Colorado with a penalty shot. Now Lawton. And I think that, believe it or not, the goal total, the 3 goals they've scored on penalty shots, is more than any attempts that other teams have.
Wow.
That no other team in the league even has 3 attempts for penalty shots, let alone the fact that the Flyers have scored 3 penalty shot goals.
Well, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. The Flyers are the
leading breakaway team. Right. You're right.
I was about to say, we are now a significant enough portion into the season. We are past the halfway point for every single team. I can start saying things like the Philadelphia Flyers are the best rush team in the NHL.
They have been, yeah. So you might as well. We're more than halfway through, so they have been, and they will continue to be right now until
at this point. Until they show me that they're not. This is who they are. I know we used that as a show title not too long ago. But
yes, I know.
This is who they are, and
it is who they are.
And they have a significant enough sample size to show that. And they're creating the most chances. Think about all the breakaway or the shorthanded goals.
Right. Well, it is who they are. It's sometimes, and we'll get into this. It's sometimes who they are to a fault, because
live by the sword, die by the sword.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because you are really living by it lately.
When you play run and gun, sometimes you get gunned.
Now, I want to say on Lawton's penalty shot, a little bit awkward.
Little awkward.
Like he's trying to make a series of moves. He almost moves backwards. He almost loses control of the puck. I guess because of how awkward it was, it allows for the time that Jake Ottinger lifts his pad up, so it just slips right underneath and goes in. Because it looks like it honestly looks like he makes a good enough move that's like, oh, he's going to elevate and he scores. And then he's struggling to almost keep his balance. And then next thing you know, you see the thing roll and you're like, oh, he didn't get enough of it. And then it's in there anyway. And you're like, oh, never mind.
We'll take it.
Sure.
There was a brief conversation on if he went backwards, and regardless, the goal counted. That's all.
So it's 4-1. I think we've got to get to this point, right?
And Owen Tippett,
yes,
just goes bananas.
Now we're going to talk over it. I don't have the volume playing, so we'll just talk over it. But this is almost at the exact same moment that he scored the highlight reel goal against St. Louis. There's about 5.5 minutes left, and here he comes.
Right. So the Flyers
charging up. And then just watch.
It just decides to cut to the middle, spinorama backhand. You've seen the goal, right? Like if you're listening to this show, you've seen the goal. You were watching the game, or you've seen it on social media, or you've seen the Sportsnet video that we're sharing from here. Owen Tippett is crazy.
I mean, this is immediate goal of the year material. Now, I'm in a spot where reactions are very tame. I would say they're controlled.
Right. And we're talking about the press box, right?
They're literal jaws on the table kind of material. Like jaws dropped at the fact that this went in the way that it did, to turn, release the backhand, bar down almost, like that's just
and
insanity.
it almost looked like he didn't even get all of it. Like it kind of rolled up on the heel a little tiny bit, and like he's still just.
So there's a little bit of a funny story with this, by the way. And I there's a couple of people who have written about this. I think first Jackie Spiegel, who's working for the Inquirer, wrote about it, I believe. Okay. And then Charlie O'Connor had a little something on it too. Owen Tippett's been using Travis Konechny's sticks.
Right.
Which does make a difference, which makes a difference because there's obviously some sizing things that are different and whatnot. So obviously.
And when we're talking about the 1% of the 1% of athletes playing at the highest level in the world, those little micro things like the stick really, really, really
they can matter. And
how you hold it, how you use it, how you handle the puck, how you do everything.
Well, and by the way, I'm trying to remember, Cam Atkinson, I think, is the one who said after the game, by the way, yeah, we're not going to let him go back to the others.
No. He's correct.
Like he's just doing, too many incredible things in 1 week to not do that. So
nope. You're stuck with that one, bud.
So that was incredible as it was. And like that capped off, like, they're already in control. Like they're pretty much in control from the penalty shot goal.
You're dominating a very good Dallas Stars team.
Well, that was the other part.
Bell to bell.
Well, and I turned around because obviously you text me, and like I had other people sending text too after
bell that. Bell to bell domination.
Right. Well, I'm talking about this is just a reaction to Tippett's goal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like because my phone starts lighting up. Because everybody's seeing this thing, and it's like, wait a minute, what did we just watch? Kind of thing, and I even said
it was a special goal.
It definitely is a special goal, and his confidence could not be higher right now in terms of what his ability is. Like, let's play this card for a second and go off of this. He's up to 18 goals on the year.
Yep.
In very short order from going, because that was 3 in no time, right? You blink and within literally 60 minutes of gameplay from 5:33 left in St. Louis on Monday night to 5.5 minutes left against Dallas on Thursday night, literally the length of one game, he scores 3 goals, 2 of them ridiculous highlight reel goals. Even the other one, the shot was really good. I mean, it wasn't like,
I'm going to phrase this very carefully.
Yes.
Owen Tippett has started to show flashes of that burst goal scoring ability that we see out of top level stars like the Alexander Ovechkins and the Austin Matthews and these guys who flip a switch and score 8 goals in 5 games.
Well, what he's showing you is that he has the ability in when things are going really well. And again, he still has to. I love the fact that John Tortorella's talked about this a little bit more because we've talked about it before. The fact that he's got to hit the net more.
Yes.
Because Torts may be right that if he hits the net more often, he probably has 6 or 7 more.
As
Like,
someone who's been betting Owen Tippett over shots on goal pretty consistently this season,
I
yeah,
mean,
he needs to hit the net more.
that
Yeah,
might be, well, it might be the safest. It's one of the safest bets because he
it's one
attempts
of the
probably
safest bets in the sport. Oh my.
by the way, like, you do realize, by the way, the clip we just showed, the spectacular goal of the year candidate immediately,
Yeah.
right, that we showed, was his 10th shot of the game.
Yeah.
10th shot of the game, the 10th shot on goal in the game, not attempt,
Well, and
on goal.
you know why that is, right?
Well, because, yeah, sure. Well, first of all, when your
Because
confidence is high, then you're going to shoot.
because the last time they played the Dallas Stars, he didn't have a shot on goal.
Oh, well, that's funny.
That is 100%.
But you know what I mean. When you're confident, you're definitely more willing to shoot. I mean,
look at
what
him
did
in
we
the
what did we
first
say?
7 minutes of that game. He had to have at least 3 or 4 shots.
They finished with 43 shots on goal as a team. He had
Crazy.
10 of them.
Yep.
Like, and the thing is that when once he is hitting the net, if he's scoring goals like that, you want him shooting that much.
Absolutely.
Like,
that's how you get 50, 60 goal scorers.
Well, do you think that the Washington Capitals don't want Alex Ovechkin taking 6, 7 shots a game because they know what the possibility is? Of course you do, because you know that's your best goal scorer. Austin Matthews should be taking 5, 6, 7 shots a game too. Same reason, right? Like,
absolutely.
Let it go. Now, granted, if a team is defending you well and you don't get it, find a way to get something productive done. But if they're giving it to you and you have a good shot, take it.
If the puck's on your stick in the offensive zone in a scoring position, you should be shooting.
So let's kind of get into the latter half of this a little bit, because this gets us through the Dallas game. I don't want to dissect tons with the 2 games yet. We'll go back to that. But obviously, one of the key things was that Owen Tippett left Saturday's game against Colorado in the 3rd period. I think he took 1 shift in the 3rd period. That's when he left. He did go down the tunnel. He did not return. And for probably about, I'm going to say 2 to 3 hours after the game was over, there was this legitimate concern that what if this is long-term?
Right.
Because there was really no update and it didn't look good in the moment. And then some word started to get out about how there was an early sense of optimism that it wasn't as bad as people think and it shouldn't be long-term. And I even immediately equated that to, because I believe Charlie's report was the one that I shared, and I added my own 2 cents, which was, even if he's out until after the All-Star break, which realistically equates to a total of 4 games.
Right.
That's a best case scenario, probably. At least it's only 4. He comes back. It's early February. No harm, no foul. And that still could be the case. He's dead.
And quite frankly, something we'll talk about a little bit later when we dive into some standings.
Mm-hmm.
You're at the point where you don't have to rush him back. If he's not ready before the All-Star game, do not play him.
Sure. Now,
you don't have to.
Right. Now, an even more encouraging sign was that before Sunday's game, and he didn't play, he didn't take warm-ups, obviously, but he tested it out. It was, honestly, I might have missed it by about 15 minutes, maybe, because I showed up to the arena before fans were in the building. That's obviously when he would have been able to test it. Right. Obviously, Jordan Hall took a picture of it and put it up on Twitter X, the platform formerly known as, however we want to keep saying this thing for moving forward, but you get the point. And I even said, that's encouraging in and of itself, that he at least had enough to get a skate on, to be able to go out and at least attempt to do something.
Sure.
Does that at least bring into play, and we're not doing the whole looking ahead portion yet, but you've got 3 more games until the All-Star break now. Does that at least take out of play the fact that, okay, so he didn't play in the first one, and you could easily assume he's not going to play in the other 3? Or does that mean that maybe Boston's back on the table, or Detroit's back on, maybe not go super short term, but
right.
Does he play by the end of the week? Is that possible? I guess it's possible. I guess it is with a day-to-day designation, but at the beginning it didn't feel like that. So that's why it's encouraging that he even bothered to test it out. So
sure,
especially for what he's become, because now he's become one of your top players. So
he's one of your big producers,
right? You need him in the lineup. So, but that's really all that we need to say about Owen Tippett at this point. We showed you the highlight reel goal, and we talked about the one in St. Louis, and
he had a special week, and
and it was a shame because it was right after those 2 big moments. He's you're starting, his name was everywhere. Well, everywhere on Thursday.
He was starting to get himself in the conversation where, if God forbid somebody goes down with an injury, he's a great late tap for the All-Star game.
Potentially.
Like at least he puts himself in the conversation, right? You get a little social media buzz going, you never know what happens.
And here's a relevance to the conversation too is the Flyers played the Ottawa Senators on Sunday. Tippett did not get to play in that game, unfortunately, because of what happened. But like the irony of who was going to be on the other side, and that, you know, that is directly tied to, you know, that Tippett is directly, I should say it that way. Tippett is directly tied to forever. The player that the player that they got back for in the trade for Claude Giroux. And oh, by the way, as he's doing things like that on Thursday, people are going,
yeah, how's that trade looking?
Like that? Well, they're thinking it looks way better, obviously, because
you got a first round pick,
right?
Come on.
Well, because now you know at this point, like, assuming he doesn't miss much more than the next 3 games, let's just say, right?
This is going to be like if Cutter Gauthier turns out to be a bum and only played 20 NHL games.
But assuming he doesn't miss more than the rest of this week, let's just say,
sure.
He's got 18 goals already this year. He had 27 last year. You know what you're looking at this point. Like, you're looking at a guy who's at the very least probably getting 30 this year. Probably. At the least.
Yeah, and that's if he slows down.
Right, and look, that's also barring don't hurt yourself any further kind of thing. But he's on that pace, and it's safe to say that. They're not two-thirds of the way through the season yet, and he's at 18.
Yep.
It's fair to say he's going to,
especially the way he tends to score in bunches. Like,
right.
Yep.
Sure. So you got that going, like that's really going for you, obviously. So that's been already a great development that he's becoming that level player that you can lean on in situations like that. You want out there for key moments like that.
And he's young enough that he's still fleshing out as a player. Like 40 is not impossible for him, like in the long run. Like probably not,
especially if he
not this year, of course.
No, but especially if he hit the net more. Like
exactly. And like if the game keeps freeing up, if he hits the net a little bit more, you never know, right?
Let's also just remember one other thing as you look forward to, like beyond this year kind of thing, because obviously they like Tippett. Obviously Tippett's got a future in Philadelphia beyond this year, but his contract is up after this year. So the person who probably was smiling the biggest after that goal on Thursday was his agent.
Yeah.
Who now is who probably is just walking into negotiations with that tape and going, "Here, do you see that?"
That's fair.
I mean, you're teetering.
Owen Tippett's gonna get paid.
Well, and I told you when he signed the contract that he's currently on that this was going to potentially age very well in terms of like, it wasn't that, because he hadn't done a whole lot to prove himself, because he hadn't had the chance to. He had basically that, 20 games.
Right.
To after the trade happened. And obviously you're going to keep him because you just got him 20 games ago for only your franchise player, right? A franchise legend. So you're going to keep him. So they signed him at 1.5 mil per year. And after the first year, like during the past offseason, we talked about this where I'm like, so he just scored 27 on 1.5 mil. What happens if he does the same thing again? Like he's underpaid for $27 million at 1.5 million. For 27 goals, he's underpaid at 1.5 million,
big time.
So you're going to have to, like, now what the decision becomes is how many years do you get?
How much term can you get?
Yeah. Well, because you're going to have to be flexible in terms of, if the term is longer, he's going to make more. He's going to he's going to push between, like, there's reasons that there's a reason to believe that you could potentially, in terms of making a significant raise, that you could possibly give him the Joel Farabee contract and say, here's 5 by 5. That probably seems a little low still, especially with the, the cap going up and all that stuff. So maybe even bump that to 6 now instead of 5. And then you sit there and you go, well, what if you tried to go the way you did with Travis Konechny and go to 6 years? Well, 6 years is probably going to be pushing 7 mil. Because so you got to weigh these things, because you know what you're, and there's a chance that age as well. But, think about how well a lot of these are aging right now. Think about how well the Konechny contract aged and how well the Joel Farabee contract could be.
And also, by the way, Carter Hart's contract is up, and
that's one you got to be really careful about. Because
of course,
we already hinted at that recently, because I even said I don't think you give him much more than a year or two anyway.
But the thing is, though, if we have,
even then he's making 4 to 5.
But if we have clarity on the Hockey Canada situation, that literally disappears overnight, or theoretically. And if it does, then you got to start thinking, what? you have to start thinking bigger than that, because at that point, 1 year at $4 or $5 million probably isn't going to cut it. That could change overnight.
Well, I don't know that you're ever getting full clarity on it, and as long as there's the possibility that you do, then you're going to be stuck in this thing.
What are you supposed to do? Sign him to 1 year contracts forever until he could be hits a UFA?
That might be the way it goes.
That sounds like a nightmare.
As much as it sounds like a nightmare, that might be the way it goes. And every team nobody's going to offer sheet him for, as an RFA. Nobody's going to offer sheet him with that hanging over his head. Nobody's going to do it. So because of that, he might not have a choice. Like, you can try all you want to. The situation is the situation, and it sucks, but it is the reality of it, that teams have to be prepared to protect themselves against the fact that your name comes up in this thing. If we get any clarity at all, it's over, and you don't want to, and you don't want to be burned by like the ideas. You don't want to be burned by the fact that you signed a big time contract and took yourself out of play for anybody else. Like you kind of almost need to have a third goalie waiting in the wings just in case.
It's wild.
And right now they kind of don't, but they could in near future. If you think about Kolosov, and they just drafted 2 guys this past year,
that feels like it's not sustainable. That feels like it's not to
sign like that.
To just have this guy that at any moment, somebody could come slap handcuffs on him.
Well, you know how that ends though, then, right? Like you said, until he's a UFA, and then when he's a UFA, it's potentially good luck getting a job.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'm saying, at least getting a job here, maybe, because if the other guys start stepping up, it's going to lead to a tougher decision. Sam Erson's going to make them think about this. Why do you think they signed Sam Erson before his contract was technically up?
Man, and that decision looks great.
Sure, but why do you think they did it? Yep. Because just in case they need, if you like what you saw, you're going to latch onto them. You're going to make sure that part of business is done, because you never know. That's why it happens. So you got to acknowledge that for what it is. But Tippett's among those guys now that eventually you're going to have to pay. It's great news that they got Farabee for as long as they do, because Farabee would be due for something big soon enough too. That's aging well.
That deal is back to looking great.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, think about how they got the Sanheim thing done. Now, last year that didn't seem great.
Yeah,
but this year it looks better.
I was gonna say, I'm still not willing to call that, rubber stamp that as a full W.
No, I'm not either. But I'm saying,
the first year looks great. He's certainly playing above that number.
If you get that guy, that's the point. It's if you get that guy that you're seeing right now, that you've seen throughout the course of this year, then it looks like a great deal.
I was gonna say, he is way outplaying that number now.
Sure,
if he plays like he's been playing this year, he should be making probably.
I'll give you another number. Do you see how Sean Couturier's played most of the year, coming back from that pause, and look at what he's making?
Tell me
he's probably playing above that, but he's playing above that number.
Tell me we weren't all very, very nervous about that contract 6 months ago.
Sure, and
we were right to be.
Right. I give him credit for showing that he's mostly durable. I mean, he's missed a handful of games this year. I think, what is it, 4 total? I think is what
Something
he's missed.
Like that,
well, because he missed the 2 earlier in the year, and then he missed 2 or 3 over the course, or no, 2, I guess it was, because he was back for the Dallas game. But he was out
over the weekend. Yeah,
he was out in Winnipeg, and he was out against St. Louis. So was Jamie Drysdale, by the way. Which
I know I was so bummed.
You were kind of bummed.
So bummed.
Yeah. All right. So back to the whole big picture thing, because we're off of the Tippett thing, and Tippett is currently recovering day to day. We'll see what happens. So let's get to the weekend portion, because obviously as that, the Tippett goal of the year candidate is like the exclamation point on the 5-game winning streak that they had at that point. Right. You come back, think about this for a minute. Just go through these 5 games, and I'm touching on ones we talked about already, so I'm just doing the synopsis of it. But hear how this 5-game winning streak sounds. Come back from down 2-0 against Montreal to win in a shootout. Come back from down 3-1 third period to beat Minnesota in overtime. Go into what looks like a scheduled loss without your top line center, your newly acquired defenseman, playing against
border travel back to
playing against the Winnipeg Jets team that had 8 straight wins, 14 straight games with a point, and looked unbeatable.
Hadn't allowed more than 3 goals in 33 games.
Well, and still didn't in this one, right, but 2-0 win. So you shut them out behind your goaltender. Instead, the team that has one of the best in the league this year. You scored 2 on him.
And that was enough.
Right, and that turned out to be enough. And then you go into St. Louis and have one of your most dominant games to that point, and then one up it with the game that you play in Dallas. I mean, right. I even
by dominating even harder a better team.
Right. Well, a way better team. And
a way better team.
Well, and this is what I said about the Tippett goal, kind of, but in a way, it almost is the team's effort, too. Tippett scores the goal that he does in St. Louis and then showed up on Thursday and said, hold my beer. I've got a better one for you.
He sure did.
But the team did, too. The team played a really good game in St. Louis, got a deserved win, and then showed up against Dallas and played what was probably their best game of the year, which really is kind of a good segue because the Colorado game that they played was unique, not their best. It was, clearly not their best, obviously, but very much I considered it like the Edmonton game that started January for them, where sometimes a top player in the world just plays like a top player in the world.
And that
was Nathan MacKinnon for you. Like,
he sure did, man.
McKinnon's just brilliant and continued to build in that game 4 points, continued to build on his points lead this year. Like, he's having a year, no question. And he's having a great, he's continuing to cement himself as one of the best players in the game. And not that that's shocking by any stretch, but you get the point.
And you still managed to drag it all the way back.
Very closely. I mean, like, was turning because it was turning into one of those games. You fall behind 2-0 and to me, the second goal in the first period, that's kind of a backbreaker, because if you can get out of that first period with just
down one, you feel good about it.
Because you did outshoot them 12-5. So you're feeling a little good about that part. Hey, like, there's some things that just aren't going yet. If it's only 1-0, we'll live with that.
Right.
And then before you can blink, it's 3-0 because MacKinnon does MacKinnon things. Right. And you get it right back. Joel Farabee, another goal. Morgan Frost, another nice assist. There you go. There's something. And you have time to chip away a little bit, and then they score again off of a rush too. Like, it was funny. The first 2 goals that Colorado scored were not like that at all. The one came tail end of a power play anyway, right after a power play had expired. So no problem. Like, that wasn't the same thing. And then they score 2 goals on you in the second period to start with that are both off the rush. McKinnon's is a breakaway partially, but the second Logan O'Connor goal is off the rush. Go to the net, tip play. Okay. You get back in it again a little bit with a Travis Konechny goal. And again, because they're kind of back in it, you're thinking maybe, and then MacKinnon scores again. And that was really one that you thought, it just looked weird. Carter Hart said it hit one of his own players on the way in, so it did change direction. The first 4 really hadn't been Hart's fault, but that one, it hit off of him late, like, as it went in. So you kind of think he's got to have a save there. Yeah. Well, and in general, too, you kind of wanted a save in general. They only had 15 shots in the game to that point, and here he goes letting one of those in. So surprise, surprise, as the third period begins, here comes Sam Ersson with another game the next day, which you normally don't see.
Right.
So Hart gets the hook, which kind of, maybe in hindsight, you don't love the idea of doing that with a game the next day, especially when you consider how that game went, but we'll get to that. And they come out and they score 2 in short order, and all of a sudden it's 5-4. By the way,
great. And John Tortorella looks like a genius for swapping the goalie.
Sure. Well, John Tortorella can look like a genius for all of that type of stuff when you win, and that's true. You know what? I didn't even write a tab for this, and I guess we'll just mention it as a footnote now, because we weren't really going to do around the league. We have a lot of other stuff to cover, but around the league. Oh, by the way, after this game ended, this Flyers Colorado game, we're standing downstairs in the locker room and all of a sudden looking at our phones and going, "Hey, look at what the Islanders did."
Patrick Waugh, the new head coach.
Now, Patrick Waugh had a quote today on his first, I guess, full day as head coach.
There's already clips of him on the ice
in
skates yelling at players, and oh my God.
That was just a morning skate, by the way. They're playing.
This is not going to go well.
They're playing a game. They're actually leading their game right now as we speak, by the way.
Well, I assume they're terrified of Patrick.
Possibly. Now, this was but I gotta read this off because this was a great quote, because we know the story by now, or at least have a general idea about how John Tortorella feels about analytics.
Right.
And these, like, old school coaches or guys who are guys who don't fully believe in that kind of stuff, I'm sure, they're going to have their thoughts on it. It might sound, it might sound a little, dinosaur like sometimes, like I don't believe in it, blah, 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 pounding the desk. I don't believe in analytics, blah, blah, blah. He had a really good quote about analytics, and it was really puts into perspective kind of, I guess, the way that we all maybe not all feel about it, but like the way that sometimes I guess just the way sometimes
the numbers don't necessarily match the eye
no,
test.
it's not that they don't. It's not that they don't match. It's I guess when you're looking at your team, at the end of the day, the results are all that matter. So his quote was, "We don't like analytics when we're at the bottom of the league, and we love it when we're at the top of the league." And it sounds ridiculous to say, but there's a lot of truth to that statement where it's like, listen, if your analytics are terrible and you're sitting at the bottom in all these numbers, then you're sitting there going, well, the analytics don't tell the whole story because it's better than that.
Right.
But when it's at the top, you're sitting there going, well, I don't care what like when you're at the top of the league, you're going, I don't care what the numbers say. Look at what we're doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so like you use analytics at the bot, like when you're in the bottom of the standings, you're using analytics to defend that what you're doing is still working. It's just not translating to results. And when you're at the top, you're sitting there saying, who cares what the numbers say and what flaws are in the game?
Right.
We're winning. Look at what we can do, So, but he did like it does throw in there, by the way, he added that to a certain extent, analytics don't lie. So he's not just throwing away all the analytics, but he's got a point.
Well, right.
He's got a point in how we perceive when you're at the top of the standings or at the bottom, that you can gloss over certain points in analytics and say, this doesn't matter because I'm winning, or we're not winning, but look at what the underlying numbers say. It's really not as bad of a process as you think.
This is why we can overlook this. Don't worry, guys. It's totally
sure.
Fine.
So my point being that, like, it was just one of those things where it's like, it maybe, you're in the game and you want to believe you're in the game, and sure, maybe the strategy of doing things doesn't line up. Like let's just, like, again, remember, you're pulling your goaltender. You're actually making that goalie change in a 5-2 game with a period to go, knowing you play the next day.
Right.
It's a risky move. And in hindsight, maybe it's not the right decision, but at the same time, Tortorella's going to tell you, we're in that game. And then he's not proven wrong by the fact that you score 2 quick goals. He's not necessarily proven wrong. And that's the catch to the whole thing.
And at that point, would you really have been all that surprised if they had scored another and tied it up? Based on how they played?
Surprised. They had a shift where everything they did, the only thing they didn't do on one of the next shifts was score.
That's what I'm saying.
I firmly believe that if they would have scored on that shift to tie the game up, because the building was going nuts, absolutely crazy.
The comeback was almost complete.
Well, because they're having another one of those. I mean, it's not quite the same, but it's close.
No,
in terms of like, hear me out. It's not quite the same, but it's close in terms of you just scored 2 quick goals to come back, to go from 5-2 to 5-4 in the blink of an eye. And it's starting to look like Detroit all over again. 5-1 to 5-5 to 6-5, maybe even in like no time at all. Right.
Real quick, something you mentioned there. I did want to shout out how loud the building was this week.
Generally speaking. Sure.
I shot you a text. Man, the Eagles sucking has been great for business over here at YWT. And I think that also goes for the Flyers. I think the fact that the team is playing well is obviously the most important factor, right? Like if they still sucked, the building would not be full.
Yeah.
But so the Eagles season fell apart. The Phillies were a bit of a disappointment. I can't tell you what's happening with the Sixers, to be completely honest.
They've been decent. They've been solid.
I know Joel Embiid's got like a real shot at winning MVP, and that's cool.
Again.
But
again, by the way, because he won last year.
Totally. But the Flyers are good. We have some fun highlight reel goals. We have some fun players. We have good goaltending. So hockey is back in South Philadelphia.
So part of the shame of it is that you, well, obviously not for you. You were at the game itself on Monday night, but Monday night was a typical was what could have been your split screen night because the Eagles and the Flyers played at the same time.
Right.
and the Eagles are in a playoff game. And sure, for a lot of people, that probably took precedence.
I checked my phone about 3 times, and as soon as they did what they did, stopped checking.
Well, I can depict it for you because I'm sitting in the same spot that I was during both of these games. So I have a TV off right over here where I'm looking above the one monitor over here. So I have a TV up there, and I had the iPad turned on so I use the iPad to stream ESPN to get the Eagles game on. I had the Flyers on TV because obviously, look, I'm obligated to choose the Flyers in a lot of those circumstances anyway, obviously.
You're going to choose the stable connection on the Flyers.
Well, not only that, but it's the bigger screen. I want to have a closer look at what's going on, totally. That kind of thing. And I have the football game on as background noise. Ironically, I never got the chance to kind of do the bit that I have done in the past a little bit where like the Eagles have lost some bad games, like, and by bad, I mean, like they've been blown out a couple times and stuff like that down the stretch of that season. So sometimes like, or just lost badly. So I've thrown out there a couple times, hey, Flyers tomorrow, whatever. Is there Flyers tomorrow at blank? Like I'll give it whatever time it was, like Flyers tomorrow at 8, or whatever. Right. Ironically, in the time frame between Tippett's eventual game-winning goal in that situation and the game being over, because I could look over and the score still says, by the way, 16-9 Tampa Bay over the Eagles, which is a 1-score game. So you can't rule that as over. You can't rule that as, hey, get away from your televisions because the Flyers are doing something that you should pay more attention to at this moment. So literally within the course of the last handful of minutes, the safety happens, and then the long touchdown that pretty much puts the whole thing away. And the touchdown happened, I think it might have been the first play I got to look at after the game went final. Like I think I tweeted final, Flyers win 4-2 against St. Louis. The whole deal just pretty much was about to go in to start, putting the finishing touches on the game story. And I looked and I saw that and I went, well, that's it. Now that's over, And I kind of got a chuckle out of it because it was so predictable. But at the same time, I'm like, that didn't happen in enough time for the Flyers game to still be going to be like, quick, turn your TVs over because
switch the set. Right.
Even if the game was still going on, like it's hard to sit there and go like, well, listen, they're going to win the game again. It's going to be their 4th straight win. Oh, well, there's also only a minute and a half of the game left at that given moment. So it's like, oh, well, sorry. Like, I'm not going to tell you to flip over for 90 seconds worth. Just watch the rest of the football game, I guess, at this point. But so it never presented itself like that. But for them to come out the next night, or not next night, but the next game that they had, which was Thursday against Dallas, which, by the way, prompted several chants about Dallas, obviously, and how great of a town it is.
Fantastic and well-deserved.
But as it prompted like stuff like that, which is still very much, the Eagles spirit kind of festering there, obviously, to deliver a performance like that and kind of, again, like get some attention on this thing, that was great. I hope that the weekend doesn't diminish that a little bit because Saturday's game was still really fun.
Yeah, sure. Any game with 11 goals with a relatively even split, it's going to be a fun game.
11. Well, I'm laughing because 11 goals until the Boston Bruins decide, hey, 7-4 wasn't good enough. How about a 9-4 final tonight instead?
Yep.
Thanks for one up in that. But the fact that they were in, and it's a shame because they were in it, and Tortorella was none too happy about the power play that Colorado got because he didn't think it was a penalty that led to it. They score on it, of course, so that pretty much kind of dashed any hopes there. The score only looks as bad as it does because of an empty netter.
Yep.
It is what it is. And maybe also kind of like, I think it was easy to shrug off because it's like, okay, first of all, Colorado's a top 5 team in the league. You just beat Winnipeg, you beat Dallas, and handily did it. All right, maybe you're due for a game like that sometime. And it was just kind of, it wasn't even that it was bad. It was just one of those days where it felt like, okay, listen, first of all, Nathan McKinnon was Nathan McKinnon, and a few things didn't go your way.
I think Nathan McKinnon heard some of the hype about this Owen Tippett kid and said, let's show up a little bit for this one.
So, but that's why it makes the bigger issue the game the next day when they play Ottawa.
A game that you really probably should be winning, based on where Ottawa's at in the standings, based on where you're at in the standings.
So here, let me paint it this way, because when we finished up the show last week, and there's 7 games ahead of you before the All-Star break at that given point. We're finishing up on Sunday. You're going. You got the one more on the road in St. Louis, and then you got these 4 games at home, and then quick trip to Detroit, and then back for Boston, and then you're off for a while. Out of those 7 games, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm going, St. Louis is beatable, Ottawa's beatable. Throw in the fact that you probably should win a game either against Tampa or Detroit because they're not bad, but they're not great.
Right.
So they're in that middle portion. And then you've got 3 that I want to see how you fare. Dallas, Colorado, and Boston. I want to see what you got.
Yep. Well, you stomped Dallas.
Well, so you started it off with really took care of business. You're better than St. Louis this year. You played like it. You got the win. Yep. Cool. Great way to start that off. Check. And then they do it against Dallas the way that they did. They play that way against Dallas. And you're going, all right, so now you passed the test.
That's an eyebrow raiser.
Well, yeah. Right. The Colorado game at that point, to an extent, and this is a fair point because I saw a lot of people talk like this. I know Snow, the goalie, said this, things like that. The game against Dallas was only so good as the response afterwards once you played Colorado. Yeah. If you play Colorado and lose 6-2, let's say, and there's no comeback and it's not close, that's problematic. That Correct. Means that now you got pushed around by somebody else and this is all fool's gold. If you don't necessarily win the game, but give an honest effort and are in it, and they play better than them for a chunk of the game, which you can say, afterwards you can say. So, no, do I kind of care that the result is 7-4? Not really. You kept getting that thing close. You know, you kept chipping away at it. You had it at 3-1. You looked like you could go 3-2 at some points. Nope. Now they give up a goal. 4-1. You get it back to 4-2. You're pushing again. You give up another one. Now it's 5-2. You get it to 5-4. You never quit on that game at the very least. That's the thing you can hang your hat on. So, all right, it wasn't a win or whatever, but I really thought that after that, okay, so now you still have 2 out of 3. If you can get the Ottawa one and get back on track, you to me at that point are looking at 3 games to go, and literally I think you need at most 3 points. You need a win, and you need one of these to go extra, and you can lose one of them, and we won't be complaining too much by the end of this thing.
I agree.
Going into the All-Star break. And that changes a lot when you lose to Ottawa.
Yes.
That's the difference. They really needed to kind of come back with the win against Ottawa. And to their credit, they weren't playing the best and opened up a 2-0 lead in the first period and a 3-1 lead midway through the game. You're looking at it going,
Igor Zamola scoring maybe the weirdest goal of the week.
Okay, now I got to tell you something about that weird goal for a second. I did tweet this. So
that happened down your end, didn't it?
No, it happened at the other end.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't catch this at first because obviously when a goal is scored, I got to go into typing like that somebody scored. I'm doing the live stuff, right? I do see how the play developed because I couldn't believe that nobody saw it. Like you just see, honestly, if anybody else did, they did a great job of deacon the goaltender and everybody else and everybody else out of it because they handled it like a scrum at the side of the net. And Zamula's over on the other side going, look what I found. And nobody's covering the goal.
Rifles it at the open cage.
But this is show relevant and flyer relevant, and you'll appreciate this. Igor Zamula shoots it into basically an open net, scores the goal, and kind of gives this celebration of sorts where he puts his hands out like, hey, look what I did. How did that happen? How did that happen? And then, I'm not kidding you, went full Yager salute.
I know you did.
Pulled the glove off and just gave you a good, woo, look at what I did. And I thought that was awesome for him. Like,
I don't think he's hit that before, has he?
No. And it's because you know what it is? He scored a second goal, obviously, in the first period. And to celebrate that one, he did much more of what he usually does, which is he kind of does this like uppercut fist bump kind of thing. It's very Pronger-like. When Chris Pronger used to score, he would do it a little bit. It's very much like that. And
Chris Pronger was just super comfortable with punching emotions, so that's why he did it.
But you get my point, and so that's usually what he does. I don't know where the salute thing came from, other than like, thank you for not seeing that it went over here. Maybe is what he was trying to do. I don't know. Like, I gotta give the kid credit because he could, like, when he debuted as an NHL player, I don't know if he spoke much English at all, honestly.
No.
And he's doing interviews on his own. He's got a way better grasp on English now.
I put puck in net.
I mean, like, I'm not going to tell you it's like you can tell.
No, that's what he said after the first period on the
right. I know. I know. I'm saying I'm not trying to tell you it's like perfect, but like he's worked at it a lot.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge credit. So like the idea that maybe the thought entered his head, like, hey, there's this guy who used to do this. I'm going to just pull that one right
Why
now.
not?
That was funny. I thought that was really cool. And it was kind of like, listen, it was 2-0. The vibe was kind of good again, because you're sitting there going, even if it's not their best game, they're up 2-0 and it's
Right.
like it's Ottawa. But Ottawa pushed, and they did not have they just didn't have it in this game. Now I want to talk about something in particular, because it's been a kind of a talking point of sorts. For a while, they've gone with the 11-7 lineup.
Yes. I think it's wearing on them a little bit.
Well, not only is it wearing on them, but this is kind of the situation where I think you have to figure out what you're doing. Because for about half the game, because Tippett's not playing, so somebody's got to come back in. And for about half the game, I thought that the choice was right. And then for the other half, I thought the choice was not necessarily wrong, but I wished you'd had 12.
Okay.
Because Nick Delorier was in. And after 2-0, and even like a little bit before, like around 3-1-ish or whatever it was, like right as it got kind of that point, it's getting physical. I mean, there was big hits being thrown.
It was a nasty little game.
So I'm sitting there going, oh, okay, like there's no, like the way this is going, there's no way one of these guys doesn't drop the gloves. That we don't see either Delorier or Hathaway go.
I assume Delorier and Zach McEwen.
Right, Zach McEwen's playing, and Zach McEwen was a healthy scratch the day before against when Ottawa played Winnipeg.
Zach McEwen with a nice little breakaway snipe, by the way, that we're probably not going to talk much about.
Well, anyway, we're not, because he's not a Flyer, but
right.
Seriously, by the way, he would get opportunities like that when he played here, and he would always find a way to miss the net. And it's like now look what he does now.
Far down.
Yeah, for real. But you get my point. And so it started out like that. It was going to be really physical. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, and now would be a great time to have a guy like Bobby Rink in the lineup.
Yep. Sure would.
Or at least have both of them. Why not both? Right?
Yeah. At this point, you got to figure out. It's almost at this point on Danny Briere.
It is, but it's like, I don't think it is completely.
Okay, so what defenseman comes out?
That's the tough decision that Tortorella's got to make, though, if you're constructing the lineups.
I think the correct answer.
Do you want to know? Do you want to who? Like, do you know what the best way to do it would be?
Is it Ristolainen?
Yeah. And it's not because he deserves it. It's because I think that you have a better opportunity to sit there and step back and go, Ristolainen's got a longer term future here right now based on the contract. He's not necessarily going anywhere.
Walker and Sealer
and Walker, they could be on borrowed time. I know they would, like, there's been talks about how they want to keep Sealer maybe.
And
I don't think they're going to do that. Well, yeah, I just like, because you don't want to pull Zamula, because you like Zamula on the power play.
No. I'm saying a Sealer.
No. I know what you're saying. I don't think the Tortorella wants to get into that at all.
Probably Sealer, Ristolainen, to be honest.
Well, to be honest with you, the turnover that basically the whole reason that they end up losing the game was because it was a bad pass by Sealer that leads to a 2-on-1 the other way.
Yeah,
I looked at that and I went, they're not going to do it. But I went, that's almost grounds to get this thing back to 12-6, and that's the guy who sits even just for a game. And they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it.
No.
And I'm not trying to say that you do it. And I'm not trying to say you do it based off of one mistake. But it's like, if you're looking for somebody who kind of didn't pull their weight a little bit, like let's be real. The Colorado game, you know who was the biggest mess out of the whole defensive core?
Okay.
Sanheim. Sanheim looked like he didn't know which side of the ice to play on, which is another part of this equation, because with Drysdale in, you had him on. It's, I like him on the right. I like him on the right. I like him on the right. Drysdale's here. You're going
back to the left. Yeah.
And then you're doing it where, you're going back to the left. Unless we decide to put you with the 7, we try to rotate something in. Now you're going to play with York again, because we like you with York. So now you're going to play right for that, but left for this, right? Like, you're mixing it up too much. What's worked all year is consistency with that. And beyond just the consistency of it, you're pouring everything into, I'll go back and check just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that Delorier played like 6 minutes in the game.
It was like 5.5. It was not
5-12. So really you're rolling 10.
Yep.
That is only going to run this team. That is only going to run this team into the ground. Right. And look, you want to try to pull that off for the 3 more games you got until the All-Star break. Go ahead and try, because every other time you've looked like a genius with it. They ran 11-7. They've been running 11-7, I think, for the better part of a week.
Well, and we know, obviously, we know that they are trying to figure out what to do with Bobby Brink. They are trying to figure out what is best for his development. Why, because they have realized that not getting him into the lineup is bad for his development. But okay, here's the thing, though.
I don't know that they have. I think we have.
Well, if we have, they have. They can't be that obtuse. Like we have to give them some amount of credit.
Have you seen some of the decisions John Tortorella makes sometimes with the lineup?
But I think. Well, so I'm curious to see what happens now going into tomorrow, because now you've lost 2 in a row, right? Like when you've won when you've won 5 games straight, you can say it's working. We're not going to change it. It's working.
Well, and obviously too, right? Like part of the equation with this was for a couple of games, you're sitting there looking at the idea that so Drysdale comes in. That's where it really started because
now you have too many defensemen.
Because Drysdale comes in now, you want to play him, and I understood that like going into the Montreal game where Drysdale debuts, you don't want to take anybody out. Everybody's been playing pretty well, all things considered. You're at least going to let this ride for a little while. And then it kind of resolves itself because Drysdale gets sick. So you're able to make that change, and kind of work with it a little bit and things like that. And then you go back to it, and it's just not something that's sustainable. It's not like
no, it's definitely not.
Teams do not play the entire year like that. So unless you would like to convert one of these defensemen into a forward, a la the Sam Morin experiment or whatever the hell it was.
Sealer played forward last season.
Well, right, but like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that means play Sealer as a forward, but like what I'm trying to get at is like, unless that's what your goal is and that you've got somebody who's kind of a hybrid who you think you can do that with, then you're just screwing around.
And we've heard the Drysdale terminology, but I don't think he's going to be getting.
No, it's not like that.
Treatment.
And you're just screwing around at that point. So I just don't understand it. Who the hell knows? They'll probably go 11. Like
maybe it's up to Danny Briere. That's what I'm saying. Maybe you.
Well, the problem is that you can't rush Briere in the process of like, hey, hurry up and make a trade so that it resolves itself.
Because that tanks your value. No, I know.
Right. Like Briere's trying to hold out for the fact that everybody's kind of in limbo right now. I'm sure
teams are going to be asking about Nick Sealer. Right.
They're going to be asking about Walker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that Walker's the one that probably moves more than Sealer does right now. They really like Sealer.
I know they do. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's just I watch the guy play defense and it just doesn't make sense. Like I know he throws hits, but like come on.
Well, he's been fine this year though. Like he's been good. Like
yeah, no, he has. But
I know. And
when you have an extra defenseman like they do, sometimes you have to get rid of somebody who is fine or good or okay or
but they're not going to rush into it. So
right.
Which is why I'm saying at some point in time, that's when the coach might have to make a decision and go back to this thing. That's the hardest part with it. If you think you can go from here on out until trade deadline time, and that's a long freaking time. Yep. If you think you can go from now until the trade deadline trying to get by with 11-7 because you don't want to pull one of these defensemen, you might be out of the playoffs.
Right. And that's the problem.
And I'm not saying this is talking about a team that at this point, here, do you want to pull this one up? Might as well put this one up there.
5 points clear.
That somehow or other, despite not gaining anything over the weekend, is still in second place.
Yep.
Because Carolina didn't win either.
Yep. And
there's 6 points to the
I was going to say there's games in hand and the factor there, but yes, as of this current moment, they have 56 points, and the Washington Capitals are the first team outside the playoffs with 50.
Well, and guess what? Even if you're talking about Washington, could have been the first team out of the playoffs. They could not be. It doesn't matter.
Well, I just mean,
No,
yeah.
No, I know. No, do you know why it makes a difference one way or the other? You finish top 3 in your division, you're in.
Right.
They're fourth in the division. You're 6 points ahead of them. You actually have cushion right now.
Which is crazy.
Right. And yet, I'm telling you right now, it has the potential to go the wrong direction with this thing. Because let's put it this way. They're not going to, as we're saying this as we speak now, they're not going to be 6 points to the clear as this game progresses, if the Dallas Stars lose to the New York Islanders under new head coach Patrick Waugh.
Crazy.
Man, is that weird to say?
So wild.
I don't know if it was weird for you to look at the pictures that were so
clean shaven. Patrick Waugh.
Well, forget that part. Surfacing to him wearing Islander blue.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt weird, but you get the point. But if the Islanders were to win that game, they jump New Jersey and Washington, go into the 4th spot. And listen, you're still 5 points to the clear, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you're going to have to, like, you can't just let this week go by, run everybody into the ground, and hey, good luck with that.
No,
like,
you mentioned earlier that this week, if this previous week had gone kind of as expected, you'd be looking at the Flyers probably getting 3 points out of these upcoming 3 games. But since you lost to the Ottawa Senators, you probably need 4 at this point. And like, if you can get 5, obviously that's great. But like, you probably would really, really, really like 4 to be comfortable, to be happy going into the All-Star break.
I think 4 is actually a safe number anyway, because like, I think it would be like, generally speaking, wouldn't it, you're going to play your 50th game on Saturday when you play Boston.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be nice to be through 50 with a round number like 60 in the points column too, and be like, listen,
that feels really good.
You're around numbers on both ends. That it would just be nice. And I think that's certainly a fair way to look at it. I mean, let's put it this way too. Let's just start with this, because this is one of the markers that I had anyway, because they've crossed every threshold that there is, right? They had the playoff spot at Thanksgiving. They had it at Christmas. They had it at New Year's. They are now pretty much guaranteed almost to get to the All-Star break, because Washington plays 3 times. New Jersey plays 3 times.
Right.
The Flyers play 3 times.
1 point together to
exactly. They get 1 point over the course of the next 3 games. They have a playoff spot right. They have a playoff spot as of, the All-Star break, which would have been unheard of to say at the beginning
6 months
of the
ago.
year.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning of the year. It doesn't mean that you don't have to be careful about the fact that prolonged losing streak, and this is turning into a disaster all of a sudden. So they really need to write this thing quick if they want to keep things going. Let's put it this way, just for sake of argument too. Like, I believe I saw Washington's 3 games this week. They have one that like immediately is like, okay, that's not much of a test, because it's like, it's one of these weeks, or I don't want to say not much of a test, because Minnesota's played better, but Minnesota's the first team on that list. Okay, not necessarily a team that you think that they are going to lose to, though. It's possible. And then they finish it off with Colorado, Dallas, the same gauntlet that you just went through. So Washington would have to sweep Minnesota, Colorado, Dallas just to tie you, and you don't get any points.
Right.
That's
that's
why I'm saying it sets up that you're likely going to find a way to manage a 1 point somewhere, whether it's a 1 point lost by Washington or whatever.
As we sit here talking to you next week, we will probably be talking about the Flyers still being in a playoff spot.
Sure. And like the actual the real unfortunate part of the whole thing, unfortunately, is go look at what happened beyond, because they played 2 afternoon games over the weekend. So Colorado wins. Okay, that's the way it starts. And maybe you weren't expecting, like, after all of the other stuff, right? After the scheduled loss in Winnipeg that didn't happen, and you throttled Dallas, it's like, okay, maybe you were due for a game like this. So, and it's Colorado. It's not like you lost to, like, you didn't lose to San Jose again, kind of thing, right? And then let me just kind of go through, because there was pretty much no other game. I think there was one other 1 o'clock game on Saturday, and that was it, like a handful of 3s, right? And then everything else was night. And the Devils lost to the Stars 6-2. And the Capitals lost to the Blues 3-0. And the Penguins lost to Vegas 3-2. And the Rangers lost to the Kings 2-1. And all of a sudden you look back and you go, everybody in the division
They didn't
lost.
lose any ground. Yep.
Well, it's not that they didn't lose any ground. It's a shame that they never got the equalizer in a game that they were playing, like that they were pushing so hard on, because even 1 point, they would have gained a point on the whole thing. Now, guess what? And I'm saying this in real time, obviously, but so they lose this Sunday afternoon. Ironically, by the way, Dallas just tied up the Islander game, so it's 1-1. Carolina has lost 5-2, and the Rangers are down 1-0 to the Ducks. Early, but down 1-0.
Another day where you could have gained ground.
And it's not even just that it's on a day you could have gained ground. It's like the Rangers have been on a bit of a slide lately. So that's how you all of a sudden find yourself after Thursday 2 points away from the Metro lead.
Yep.
2 points out of a tie, at least first at that moment.
Right. There's also a chance.
I'm even looking at the situation with like the Carolina game here. It's like Carolina didn't start play. Like that game started at 5 o'clock. The Flyers played at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Right.
Carolina is going to go into that game and maybe they're not like crazy interested in the result. Like I don't think teams are doing that in
Teams aren't
January.
scoreboard watching yet. Yeah.
But if you're just watching, generally speaking, you're sitting there going, we've known for 3 hours what the situation was with the Flyers game, that they were going to lose this game at that point, or that they had lost this game. And here comes Carolina. All they got to do is get 1 point, and by virtue of games played, they're back in second.
Sure. And we talked about, the downside of where this week could go in the terms of, they could lose all 3 games and, still be in a playoff spot or clinging on or, hanging out
right,
whatever. But this week could also just as easily go the other way. And if you get 5 out of 6 points here, and I don't know how supremely likely that is, but I don't think it's crazy. And if you get 5 out of 6 points here, and the Rangers keep doing what the Rangers have been doing, we could be going into the All-Star break with the Flyers having the division lead.
Well, I'm not trying to jump the gun with stuff like that. The Rangers have the benefit of, look, it's early in that game against Anaheim. We know what kind of team Anaheim is. It wouldn't be shocking if the Rangers opened it up by 4 now because win that one. Then they play San Jose. Now you close it with Vegas and what has definitely been a scrappy Ottawa team, because Ottawa, by the way, in addition to beating the Flyers on Sunday, lost in overtime to the Jets on Saturday.
Yeah.
And mostly outplayed them too. So
Shane Pinto's starting to find. Well, he actually just came back.
He just played. So. Yeah, no, are you thinking of Josh Norris coming back too?
Josh Norris is finding his legs. But if Shane Pinto can add some depth to that team, they might be. I don't know if they're making the playoffs. I think they're a little far down at this point, but they might play spoiler for a bunch of teams. Like they're going to be a fun squad to watch.
And that's the thing. Like at some point in time, when you realize that the Flyers were not the better team throughout the course of this game on Sunday, you're sitting there going, like, the Flyers for the course of the season are playing with house money because, like, obviously nobody had them here in the standings and all stuff like that. But Ottawa's also playing with house money because it's like, hey, if you're competing in a game, it's been such a rough year for them just by looking at the standings that it's like, who cares? Like, go out and go out and spoil a team's game. Then who cares? Go out and play spoiler.
Yeah, and I hope that's what new ownership is doing, but it is also new ownership, so that we might have guys gripping sticks a little tight, going, "Ooh, who does he like? Who does he not like?"
Potentially, but I think that there was definitely, at least watching the game against the Flyers, there was an element of carefree, like.
Sure. Well, and yeah, like I said, Ottawa's a fun little squad, and even if they end up not making a playoff push, they can, make some teams uncomfortable down the stretch. They play, and they play fun physical hockey, so they're just a fun team to watch. Speaking of fun physical hockey, Tampa Bay looking ahead here.
Yeah, I mean, I always get interested by, and I'm trying to think, because Winnipeg, when they played Winnipeg, it was this example. When they played St. Louis, it was kind of I think it was this too. Playing teams that they haven't played yet.
Okay.
Because I'm curious to see how they handle things like that. It's kind of weird to go through a big chunk of the season and go, oh yeah, it's all like you're more than halfway through the year, and now you're seeing
like a Tampa Bay Conference team.
Right. A Tampa Bay. Let's put it this way. Guess what? Their first game out of the All-Star break is Florida. They haven't seen Florida this year.
Oh, that's weird.
Right. Like you're getting to the point where it's like, by the way, like, and ironically, like I'll use Detroit as an example because it's an easy one. Because they play Detroit the game after Tampa. They're going to play Detroit and close the season series.
Right.
On January 25th. Meanwhile, they're playing their first game against Tampa on January 23rd, and they won't play their first game against Florida until February 6th.
I will say, just in general, I do like the NHL schedule. The fact that you see every team every year, the fact that there's a little bit less emphasis on divisional games.
Right.
But yeah, it is weird. Some of the weird cluster things they do. Like the Flyers will play 3 games against the Leafs this season.
Mm-hmm.
First one's February 15th.
Well, guess what? This is happening also, by the way, with Boston. That Boston game this upcoming Saturday.
The first game of the year?
That's their first meeting of the year too, because they have two. They have back-to-back Saturdays in March.
Okay.
So one in Boston first, then one in Philly again. So it's 2 in Philly.
Those might be some fun games if teams are getting geared up for the playoffs.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, well, this is what I tried to tell you about, like where things were gonna be with the fact that after what was it that when they lost to Pittsburgh, it was the last divisional game they were gonna play until the Stadium Series. Like
something like that.
That's a big gap from January 8th to February 17th. That's a big, chunk without to play as many games as they have in the course of the month of January and then not see another Metro team during that whole course of time.
Right.
I mean, think about even down to, we just talked about the Rangers and how, the Flyers got to within 2 points of the Rangers for the Metro lead. The next time, they faced them on Black Friday was the last time they played them.
Yep.
They don't see them again until February 24th.
Crazy.
Imagine going from the last Friday of November to February 24th.
Late February.
A legitimate 3 months time before you play that team again.
Insanity.
Right. So then it becomes a redo of the measuring stick kind of game, because you're going, it's not the same thing as when they played them on Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh yeah. It's an entirely different team. Just the way they carry themselves, the vibe in the locker room, just it's a whole different team.
So that's the interesting part. You're playing two teams you haven't seen yet this year, both on home ice.
Yep.
Cool. You're going to get a feel for whether or not, whether you stand up to them or not, kind of.
Absolutely.
See how you fit.
Tampa's a team that's kind of floating around the playoff race, and then Boston has been excellent again.
Well, and then I'm sure that the Detroit game goes somewhere in the middle of the previous two. I mean,
yeah.
Whether it's you had 1-0 and you had 7-6 in a shootout, so I'm sure it'll fall somewhere in the middle. It's got to, right?
Right. Somehow.
Give me a normal 4-2 result.
It's 8-3.
Oh, stop! Don't do that.
8-3. I don't know who. I'm not calling a winner.
You do realize, by the way, just saying, you do realize how much fun I have sitting up in the press box when there's a 7-4 final and I got to go through all of these things. And oh, by the way, 7-4 when it was 2-0 after the first period.
Right. And not even a win, right? It's not even fun.
Yeah, 5-1 was a little bit more fun than 7-4
especially when Owen Tippett and Scott Lawton did what they did.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. As we're kind of heading towards the end of the show here,
you want to pop this up too really quick? The weekend events.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a little bit of Flyers alumnus activity this weekend. You get the alumni game on Friday night against the Boston Bruins, and then on Saturday, Mark Recchi goes into the Flyers Hall of Fame. Yep. Supremely well deserved, of course. Obviously, a well-traveled veteran, Mark Recchi.
Well, already a hockey Hall of Famer, so Flyers Hall of Fame only seems right.
Is absolutely suiting.
Yes,
even though he won his cup as a Penguin.
Well, in fairness, he's got 3 of them. So
the other two were what? The Canadian,
Carolina, and then Boston.
Oh, Boston! I forgot he was on that. Boston.
He went out on top with Boston.
Right.
So. Yep. Which is also the reason why the choice of date, obviously, it didn't just have to do with the fact that because obviously they're using
it's a 12:30 game and he has a 2:30 tea time.
No, it's not that at all.
Okay.
Well, no. I'm saying it's obvious the date choice because to have Boston and they're doing it kind of as a lump celebration. So there's also the the 50th anniversary of the 74 Cup is this year as well. So they're naturally you're going to bring in the team that they beat for the cup.
That's pretty funny.
And have a celebration.
And we love it.
Well, so to my understanding, it's at least 50 alums are coming in for this weekend.
Wow.
Just about every living member of the 74 team will be there.
That is awesome.
I mean, pretty much all. I mean, throw in the fact that one of which is putting on the skates and actually playing in that alumni game that Joe Watson's going to actually suit up for it, which that'll be
a really cool day to be in the press box on Saturday, I'm sure.
Well, I kind of am doubling down on this weekend because the anticipation is I'll be there Friday as well.
Okay.
So to do the alumni game as well, which is at that point in time, you're just that's one of those. That's one of those ones where there's no implications. And I typically don't cover those. I've gone to a few of them just to go, but I don't really cover the alumni games typically.
Right.
But the opportunities there, Recchi's going to already be in town by Friday. Well, obviously because he's playing in the game on Friday also. Little bit of a change of plans with that alumni game, by the way, because when it first came out, it was the Crazy Eights line was going to play.
Right.
Unfortunately, they put out that Brett Fedek had, I think, either tore his rotator cuff or something like that. So he will not be able to attend anymore. Recchi still Recchi still gets some pretty cool line mates for the game instead of playing on the crazy eights line. He still gets Lindros, and then he gets Leclerc too.
Okay.
So
pretty
good.
Good.
So I mean, those two are kind of pretty
still
good.
2/3 of the Legion of Doom.
I mean, so I've heard a few different things because I think Chris Therrien's talked a lot about it on Snow the Goalie a little bit. So Therrien said he's playing with Dennis Seidenberg. Bush is obviously in goal for part of this thing. Robert Esch is the other goalie for the Flyers, so that'll be fun.
By the way, have you heard that Bergeron's been doing some skating? And
so Therrien said
he claims that the skating is warm up for the alumni game.
Therrien said that he believes that both Bergeron and Chara are playing in this game.
That'd be kind of cool.
It hasn't been confirmed. Obviously, the biggest name that we know that is confirmed is Ray Bourque, which is cool as anything. That's great.
As far as big names get, it's a pretty big one.
Right. Like that's insanely cool to begin with, obviously.
Absolute hockey legend.
You're right. Like it's gonna be one of those nights. And there's crossover too. Like there's, guys who played for both that are gonna be involved in this thing, which is really cool too. So like it's gonna be a fun celebration of that. And then you got the next day, obviously, with the ceremony. The 12:30 start, by the way, is legitimate puck drop from what I'm to understand.
Okay.
The ceremony will be noon, so that is
early if you have tickets.
Well, so I wasn't sure at the kind of going into this whether or not it was going to be like, hey, it's 12:30, but wink, wink, it's a 1:00 game.
It's weird being in Central Time and seeing 11:30 a.m. on the NHL app.
Yeah, that's true. I know.
It's very strange.
But there you go. So that's, these things are always done well. I'm really interested to see how this goes. The whole thing, by the way, an alumni game, a Hall of Fame ceremony, all of that type of stuff. Considering I'm pretty sure it definitely is since the New Eric press conference, but I'm pretty sure like this is the first one of these that like under Dan Hilferty, they kind of get to have their fingerprints on something like this. Okay. So I kind of can't wait to see how they pull out the stops for this. These are usually done really well anyway.
Yeah, of course.
But I wonder if it's not even done with even more gravitas than like even in previous years, because it just feels like
there's so much on it, right? You're talking about the 50th anniversary of the Cup team. We just had the Ed Snyder celebration 2 weeks ago. You get that many alumni in town. You get some people who haven't really played in a while. Like we're building a special little storm here, and it should be a lot of fun.
Sure, and here's the interesting part, because I'm curious as to how that somewhat affects the game against Boston. When you have something more to it than just, hey, you're playing the Boston Bruins today. You know what I mean? Like those games, those games are going to have a good, solid crowd, packed house. Now, Now, I'm not going to tell you that doesn't mean that there's going to be some Bruins fans that probably come in to see
probably a bunch.
To see Recchi and to see the ceremony. And I'm not even worried about the alumni game part. The regular game. But like I think back to, because I know I'm going to even say this is because I saw all the memories on my socials. The Lindros jersey retirement was around this time of year when it happened several years back, and they're playing Toronto, and they're playing Toronto, so there's a link to somewhere else that Lindros played, but it's obviously his jersey retirement as a Flyer. And there's an energy about it, and they come back and they won that game, and it was in overtime, and Couturier scored the game winner. It's like that's that lifts the place a little higher, because it's not just another win like in dramatic win. It was a win on Lindros night. Like this is gonna be Recchi's day, and it's gonna be the 74 Cup teams weekend and things like that. And it's like, how does that fuel what they've got going? Because let's be real, when this was all announced prior to the season starting, it was not circled like this, not in the sense that there was, hey, there's playoff implications on every game they play from here until the trade deadline and beyond, right?
And like the clip of Recchi going into the locker room and reading out the starting lineup on Saturday is gonna be a really cool little clip, because he's gonna read the starting lineup. Let's be honest.
It would be cool if he did.
They're gonna record it. They're gonna put it out there. At least they should.
If they're
not, if they're not doing it, like, come on, guys, come on.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. That is a good spot for us to put a kind of a pin in it here. We will be back next weekend to talk about that game. A little bit of an all-star heads up, a little bit of a wrap on kind of the first half of the season.
Yep.
So yeah, we will be back next week to talk about that, talk about this week's worth of games. In the meantime, for kind of more up to the minute updates, follow Kevin on Twitter /X at Kevin_Durso. Follow the show at YWT Podcast. You can find us everywhere you find your podcasts, including sportstalkphilly.com. Yeah. Anything else, Kevin?
No, just continuing this busy stretch of games, 3. Well, for me, it's not really 3, is it?
No.
I'm throwing an alumni game in there too. So it's
but you did that one to yourself.
Yes, I did. I did. Well, yeah. It is what because it's rare. You don't get those every year.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk all about it next week.
I was about to say, I look forward to hearing all about it next week. And until then, see ya.